Cool. It is 1:05. So as people are downloading Spark AR, the first session of the workshop is just basically getting you guys introduced to the interface of Spark AR, and then the majority of the rest of the workshop will be 3 filters, like going through the process of making 3. And so, yeah, this is like my first time doing a workshop, so bear with me. But let's get started. If you can see my screen, the center of the interface is called the viewport, and it's basically where you can see your effect as you build it. And within the viewport, there is this video thing that you can expand. And this is called the simulator, which basically represents a device's screen, but is also used to preview how your effect will look on different device types. So like you can go up and change your iOS device and your Android device to make sure that your effect is working on not just your own phone. And by default, the simulator is set to orbit, simulate by orbit. And what that means is that this simulates what the camera will see. So if you click and drag your mouse, you can move the camera and change the view within the main viewport. If you changed it to simulate touch, basically, whenever there's a touch interaction, that will happen. But simulate orbit is the default. You can, once you're like, if you want to test it on your own phone, you can go down to the bottom, click test on device, and you can send it to your app, and you can test it there. We will definitely get to that once we're done with our first filter. Awesome. So you'll also notice at the top of the viewport, there are a couple of buttons, and these are called manipulators. And these are super useful and a quick way to experiment with the different objects that you'll be adding. The main 3 are position, rotation, and scale. Awesome. So next up is the scene panel. And this is where you'll add the objects that will make up your effect. There are already a few objects here. The first is the device and camera, which represent the device the effect is playing on, and the camera the effect is viewed through, and these cannot be removed. There's also ambient light and directional light, and these basically give 3D effects realistic lighting. But for the effects that we're doing today, you won't be needing to do anything with them. And then lastly, the microphone captures sound detected by the device's microphone and plays it back into the scene. So these are the default ones. If you wanted to add an object, you can either click the add object button at the bottom, and this window will pop up, or you can right click and you'll get to that same window. And when you do either of these, you'll see a list of objects available in Spark AR, and these will allow you to make all different kinds of effects. For example, the plane tracker will detect a real world surface like a table, and the face tracker will obviously have something tracked to your face. Cool. Right beside the scene panel is the layers panel. And this is basically, how do I describe it? It's like where you create and configure layers. And layers are used to place scene objects in front and behind each other. So if you think about in PowerPoint how like there's the option to do bring forward and send backward, this is exactly what the layers panel will do for your objects. Cool. And below the scene and layers panel is the assets panel. And every external asset that you use in the filter is added to the project via this panel. Clicking add asset will bring up a few options of what kinds of assets you can add. You can also use this button to create materials, scripts, playback controllers, animation controllers, etc. But most of the time for me specifically, I just drag and drop the assets into this panel. Awesome. The last panel is the inspector panel, and that is on the right side. So when an object or asset is clicked in the scene or assets panel, you can use this inspector panel to make changes to its properties. For example, you can change what layer something is on, adjust whether it's visible, change its position, scale, rotation, etc. And the options on this right side panel will change depending on the object or asset selected. Cool. So those are the main panels. And there's only one other main thing before we can dive into our first filter, and that is the patch editor. So the patch editor is Spark AR's visual programming environment. And you can use it to add interactivity, logic, and animation to your effects without needing to know any code. You can also use it to create textures and complex changes to materials as well. But to open the patch editor, you need to go to your View toolbar and click Show/Hide Patch Editor. Nice. Cool. And we will be using this a lot. And it's basically, what's that programming thing that MIT made where it's like blocks? I forgot what it's called, but the entire patch editor is just blocks. And you like use lines to connect between them for logic. So it's not too difficult. And then lastly, like I said before, to preview effects on your own device, you can connect your account and then send that effect to your Facebook camera or Instagram camera on your phone. Awesome. I guess we are ready to get started then. So the first filter that we'll be doing is a classic, and it is a randomizer filter. This basically was one of the first ways of like popularity filters. You've probably seen them a lot. It's basically where images rotate above a person's head and land on something that they quote unquote recommend, but it's all random. So I just posted the Google Drive folder of assets, and the first folder within that folder should have the assets for this filter. Cool. So the first thing that I am going to do is bring in all the image assets. So I'm going to download, I'm going to go to the link. And I'm going to download image 0 to image 13 and then drag them into the assets panel. Okay, I see a question in the chat. And so basically create a blank template. So let me just download these real quick. Can I download them? Okay, cool. Everyone good so far? We are using the image assets. Yash, honestly, there is no alternative. I wish there was, but yeah, I'm sorry. Cool, mine have downloaded, so I am just going to drag and drop all 14 images into the assets panel. So a huge thing to note is once you drop them in, they are under this textures folder. And you have to click no compression in the right-hand panel to make sure that the images are shown up correctly. I don't know what the right term for this is, but basically if you don't do that, they become very blurry when you actually preview your effect. Yes, Spark AR is a augmented reality platform specifically for Facebook and Instagram. And so I believe you do have to have a Facebook account. You click no compression. Awesome. So once you've imported your images, we are going to take all the profile headshots. We're going to highlight them. And we are going to go to the right-hand bar and click texture sequence. This basically is a sequence of images that can basically rotate between all the different options. And after you do that, we are going to make materials. So let's name this material title. And we are going to change the shader type to flat. And this basically means that there's not going to be any shadows on the image. And then we are going to choose the title image, image 0. We are also going to create a material for the texture sequence. Let's just name that sequence. We're also going to change this to flat. And then we're going to choose a new animation sequence. And then choose the image 1 to 13. Yeah, sorry, guys. So just a little recap. You create a material through the Add Asset button. Name that title. Change the shader type to flat. And then make the texture image 0. And then do that again for sequence. Shader type flat. But when you add the texture, press the button new animation sequence. And that will lead you here. And this is where you add the texture. And we are also going to click this randomize and change the FPS to 15. Unfortunately, I don't have slides. I was going to do this all freehand online in real time. Yeah. Is there a reason we use FPS 15 specifically? Yes, because the FPS 25, the images go way too fast if you, what's it called? When you like have them animate, and so 15 makes it easier to, makes it look better, basically. Can you please repeat the material part again? Yes. So you go to the bottom of the assets panel and you click add asset. You click material and you change the shader type to flat. And then you add the image 0 texture. And that is for title. And then you do that again for sequence. But instead of adding the texture, you click new animation sequence. And this is where you add the texture sequence that you made earlier with the 13 images. Yeah, for sure, Benjamin. So you just highlight all 13 of them. You go to type, and then you change that to texture sequence. Are we supposed to have the sequence material? Yes. I can post the Google link again. Awesome. So once you have all that done, that is all we need to do with our assets panel. And now we're going to move on to the scene panel. And this is where we add the objects to incorporate the materials, which is like the design. Topher, don't do that. Sorry, that's my puppy. Cool. So in the scene panel, I'm going to right click and I am going to create a face tracker. And this basically will allow us to have the images move with the head. Next, we are going to add a canvas. And this is a container to host other objects in. And under this canvas object, we are going to add a rectangle. So what I did just there is I right clicked on the object and I added an object underneath it. Says I don't have access to the drive for some reason. It should be public. Share. Yeah, it says anyone on the internet with this link can view. So I'm not sure why. Okay, cool. I'll just move on then. So under this rectangle, under this canvas, we're going to rename this rectangle title. And then we're going to add another rectangle and we're going to name that sequence. And so when you click title, you can see that the right-hand sidebar pops up. And this is where we can add our material. So for title, we're going to add the title material. For sequence, we're going to add our sequence material. And just to go back for sequence, you basically create a new animation sequence when you're choosing a texture. And then in the animation sequence, you choose the texture sequence that you made earlier. Cool. So after you have assigned the respective materials to the respective rectangle objects, yeah, so under material, just click the plus sign, and then you choose, it'll give you a list of options, and you just choose the one. Awesome. So you can see now at the corner, it's going crazy. So we're just gonna click on the left side nav thing, pause, so that's not distracting. Cool. After you've added the materials, we are going to change the scale of the rectangles. So we're going to change these to 2. That basically just increases the scale by 2. Awesome. So next, we are going to have these images move with the head. So the first thing that we're going to do is click on the face tracker and then drag it into your patch editor. And this basically will give us the 3D position of the face so that we can use that to correlate with our rectangle objects. So once you've dragged the face tracker into the patch editor, 3 separate boxes should appear. And that is exactly what we need. Cool. Now we're going to add some more blocks. And the way we do that is either clicking add patch at the bottom corner or what I personally prefer, just right click and search for unpack and align the 3D position to that entry arrow point. And as you can see, it shows the face coordinates moving, and that's what we need. Next, we're going to right click and search for a patch called multiply. And we're going to take the X coordinate and multiply that by 100. We're then going to copy and paste this, which I just do Control C, Control V, but do the same thing with the Y value. Cool. Just to reiterate, right clicking, search for unpack, adding that into the patch editor with the 3D position, and then searching for multiply and taking the X coordinate into the first value and taking the Y coordinate to the second one. Interesting, 0, 0, 0. I think it is fine. Maybe you have your video stopped, and that's why it's not moving, which has happened for me now. But if you were to play it, it should change. Perfect, awesome. So we're actually going to change these second values to be 500 and negative 500. This basically amplifies the amount that the image will move with the head. Now we're going to search for the add patch and duplicate that for both of these. And we're going to add 130 to the first one and then 100 to the second one. And this basically, the images are currently in the 0, 0 position within the phone frame. And so we're adding 130 to make it centered vertically and horizontally. After you've multiplied and added your X and Y values, we're going to bring them together with the pack patch. And so we're just going to move that there and move that there. And you can see that we don't have a third attribute. And so we're just going to change this to be a vector2 patch, a vector2 pack patch instead of a vector3. Awesome. Everyone good so far? Hi, Amelia. I do have the notification thing that I think it's recording. So yes. How do we change it to vector2 again? So when you click on the pack patch, you can see there's a little drop down blue arrow thing. Just change that to be vector2 instead of vector3. If this is being recorded, then definitely you can definitely just rewatch it. But I'm not exactly sure where it's being recorded. I mean, if it's where it's going to be posted. But yeah, I'm sure one of the MLH people will know. Awesome, cool. So after that, we are going to go to our title and sequence objects, highlight both of them, and click the position attribute. And this will automatically bring two patch objects into your patch editor. And we just want to hook these up to the pack. So if we press play, it should be following the head. And if you wanted to have it move more, you would just edit these multiply values to be larger. Cool, awesome. So that was the easy part. The hard part is to get the interaction figured out. So what we want to do is we want the user to record and then show the title sequence for 2 seconds before going to the randomizer sequencing jig. And then after 4 seconds, land on only 1. And so what we are going to do is we're going to click the camera object, and we're going to also drag that down into the patch editor. And as you can see, it has 4 attributes: front camera active, back camera active, photo captured, and video recording. We will be using video recording to ensure that our interaction only happens once the user presses record on Instagram. Cool. So we're going to search for the patch delay, and we're going to hook that up to video recording and set the duration to 2. And so this is the start of the interaction logic for the title image. Can you please show how to add the title and sequence in the patch editor? Yes. So if you click title and sequence, in the right-hand panel, there is the property position. Clicking the arrow will add those patches into the patch editor automatically. And then you're just hooking that up to the pack. Awesome. So after the delay, we are going to search for a patch called Pulse and hook that up to the delay. And this basically is like what it says on or off. If it's on, then something will happen. If it's off, then something will happen. Yay, Yash. Okay, so very, very quick overview. Move all the textures, move all the images from the drive into Spark AR. Make sure that you click no compression. Create 2 materials, one title, one sequence. And then add those textures into those materials. For sequence specifically, you have to create a new animation sequence. And then in scene, you are adding a face tracker by right-clicking and adding a face tracker, and then a canvas with 2 rectangles underneath. And then you can just like follow, if you're behind, just like that's the entire logic of attaching the images to the head. And you can just do that post. I mean, while we're working on the new logic. Cool. After Pulse, we are going to go to Switch. And after the Switch, we're going to search for a not patch. And after the not, we're going to click title, and then we're going to click the property visible, the arrow beside that, and that will add that patch into the patch editor. So what this basically means is after 2 seconds, don't show the title image anymore. It's a lot for a very simple thing, but the yellow patch is to indicate whether the title image is visible or not, and you just click title in the scene view, go to the properties panel, and click that arrow next to visible. We are almost done, guys. So the rest of the interaction starts from a patch called runtime. And it does what basically what runtime is. It's just the amount of time since the start of running. And we are going to search for a patch called offset. And we're going to have that runtime value go into the offset value. Then we're going to hook up the pulse to the reset property of the offset patch. And so what basically this offset will do is the rest of the interaction logic after the offset patch will only happen after the 2 seconds of the video recording. Next up, we're going to search for a patch called less than. And then we are going to put the second input as 4. And what this less than patch will do is anything after this will be executed with under the 4 seconds. And this is where we add our animation patches. So if you search for loop animation, we're going to hook that up to the less than and change the duration to be 0.15. Then we're going to search for the random patch. Okay, why is that not working? Oh, here, that's why. Make sure you take the looped property from the loop animation patch into the random patch. And the start range will be 0 and the end range will be 13, which is the max amount of images we have in our texture sequence. Then we're going to search for the patch floor, and this will basically round down those values to the, we'll do what floor is. And then finally, click the animation sequence, press current frame. I'm going to attach that. Whew, okay, that was a lot, but I'm going to go through it one more time. So for runtime, yeah, so to group the images, you basically highlight all 13 and then change the type to be texture sequence instead of single textures. Gosh, cool. So runtime goes into offset, which will go to less than, which has an input of 4, second input of 4, which then will go into loop animation, looped into a random patch. And that value is floored to be a specific frame of the animation sequence. And to get the animation sequence yellow patch, you go to the animation sequence in the assets panel and you click current frame. So after that is all said and done, that is it for the first filter. Let's see if it works or if I made a mistake at all. Okay, something is, oh, I missed a really key point. So go to the sequence object in the scene and click the visible property. And we're going to have this be visible after the 2 seconds. There we go. Yeah, we're basically done with this first filter. So after you've done all of that, yeah, the last part is to go to the sequence object and click the visible property arrow and add that to the patch editor after the delay of 2 seconds. The drive link should be earlier in the chat, but I can post it again. Cool. After that's all said and done, click the test on. Yeah, so the simulator doesn't simulate the actual recording on a phone. And so through logic, since it's not being recorded, the title sequence is always visible. But once the user does record, the sequence will be visible after 2 seconds. And so you can actually test that by sending it to your Instagram camera, which I'm going to do right now. And if I press the record button, yay, it works. Cool. Press the record button. The runtime greater than offset, where is the reset connected to? The reset is connected to the pulse from the earlier interaction. So from here to here. Cool. Something that I will also do is, for the people who aren't able to finish the first filter or having problems, I will upload the export file into the Google Drive so that you can open it yourself and test it out on your device. I'm actually going to do that right now. File upload. Awesome. It's there if you guys want to check that out as we move on to the second filter, or you can check it out later. Cool. So I'm going to exit out of this. But if you do want to save, save. Okay, so the second filter that I will be doing is a really cool filter that I personally like. It's called Palette. And if you guys know Kat from MLH, she uses this kind of filter a ton. And this is also a very popular aesthetic filter you can find on Instagram. And so let me open up another window so that we can get started on that one. Share screen. So this filter will have less logic within the patch editor and more content within the scene panel and materials panel. So make sure you go to Filter to Palette within the Google Drive and download Dust01, Dust02, Dust03, Dust04, Face Color LUT.arp, and LUT.png. And that's all you will need. I'll just give it a minute before we just get started. The other LUTs are if you want to change the look of your filter different from the one that I will be using. So instead of LUT.png, you can download any other LUT that you see fit. And these are just some examples that I have. If you guys don't know what a LUT is, it's basically a lookup table, and this changes the color of your camera. So you could, one of the ways people use LUTs is like anything that's green, you can turn into blue. You can have all the colors be darker than usual. It's just a way to mix up the aesthetic. Hey Yash, not yet. Just download everything from filter to palette within the Google Drive. Okay, cool. It is. So when you create a new project, just click blank. Amelia. Awesome. So I am going to go ahead and start moving my textures into the assets panel. And like what we did earlier, highlight all of them and press no compression. What is a fast color.lut zip? This fast color LUT is a custom patch that will make it easier for us to use the LUT within our patch editor. So after you've imported the textures and pressed no compression, we are going to take the 4 dust textures and change that into a texture sequence. Awesome. We also need, this time, a camera texture as well. And so if you press camera in the scene panel, you can see on the right side, there's a property called texture extraction. And we're going to click that, and that will add the camera texture into our assets panel. Cool. Can you show again how to create the texture sequence? Yes. So you highlight all 4 of the textures. You go to the right-hand panel, click type, and then change that to texture sequence. Awesome. So like we did before, we are going to create a material for our LUT. We're going to change the shader type to flat, just like last time, and choose the texture LUT, just like the same as last time. We are also going to do that for our dust as well. Change to flat, and press new animation sequence just like last time. Click the texture sequence that you made, and then change the FPS to 5. Where did you get the camera texture? Yeah, so if you go click camera in the scene panel, you can press the plus button right by here. And camera texture 0 is the resulting output. Both the dust and LUT materials are flat. It's basically the camera, like the actual camera. It's pretty cool. Awesome. And then make sure you add the LUT patch as well. I just did that right now. Cool. That is now it for a bit for the assets panel, and we're going to move on to the scene panel. So we are going to create a canvas, just like last time, and we're going to call this boxes. If you double click the name of the object, you can change the name. And then under boxes, by just like highlighting the object and right clicking again, create a box. Create a rectangle, and we're going to name that box 1. We're actually going to scale this down to be half of the size that it is. And then if you guys see on the right-hand side, these like little icons, this basically will move your object to a side of the screen or the middle based on the type of device. So we are actually gonna click the most right one, and that will have it be on the right-hand side of the phone. How do I add the patch? You just drag it in just like the textures. Cool. Once you have box 1 with 0.5 scale and border to the right, we are going to duplicate this 5 times. So basically what I did is duplicated box 1 to box 2, and then right-clicked, duplicated that into box 3, right-click box 3, duplicated that into box 4, and then duplicated box 4 into box 5. So you can see that we have 5 boxes, but we only see 1 on the screen. That is because they all have the same position. So what we're going to do is for box 2, we're going to change the Y position to be 60. Box 3, we're going to change the Y position to be 120. Box 4, we're going to change it to be 180. And box 5, we're going to change it to be 240. Yeah, to add the boxes, right-click, create a canvas, and then on the canvas, right-click and create a rectangle. And that rectangle will be 0.5 scale, and then you duplicate it 5 times. So now you can see that we have 5 separate boxes on the right-hand side, each with a different Y value. Awesome. And so we are going to create another canvas. This time we're going to name it, we're going to call it dust. And then under this canvas, we're going to create a rectangle, and we're going to call that dust as well. This will be a little bit different though. We are going to go to the width and height parameters, properties. If you click within those boxes, there's an option to fill width. And so that's exactly what it's going to do. And then fill height. So now your entire camera should just be this one dust image. Okay, so from there, we're going to go to materials, and we're actually going to add the dust material to this. So now we should see an animation sequence of just anomalies, basically. Cool. But this is not what we want. We actually want those particles to be, I was a little lost at making the materials. Cool. So when you create a material, rename it, change the shader type to flat, and then add that specific texture. And for dust, it's a bit different. You go to new animation sequence and add the texture sequence that you made. When I added the dust material, it's just a white screen. Okay, never mind. Cool, awesome. So we're actually going to change this, actually. We actually don't want this to fully envelop our entire screen. And so when you go to the dust material, we're going to change the blend mode into subtract. Ooh la la. And then we're going to change opacity to be 50. How do you feel width and height? Yes, so just click once within the box, and there should be an option to press fill width. And then once you've filled the width and height, add the dust material, and then within the dust material, change the blend mode to be subtract, and change the opacity to be 50. Cool. That was awesome. So now we actually want to change the colors of these 5 squares. So what we're going to do, oh, I have so little time. Oh my gosh. Dang, we don't even get to the third filter, which is a slit scan. But I'll add those files into the Google Drive. So what we are going to do now is create 5 more materials. So we'll call this material 1. Flat. And then we're just going to duplicate this 5 times. And you can see where I'm going with this. 5 materials for the 5 different boxes that we have. So these 5 materials should be flat. And yeah, assign the boxes to the respective material. So box 1, material 1, box 2, material 2, box 3, material 3, box 4, material 4, and box 5, material 5. So now you can see they kind of disappeared, but that's okay because we're going to work some patch editor magic. Awesome. So we're going to go into the access panel. We're going to drag the camera texture into the patch editor. We're going to drag the LUT into the patch editor. And we're going to drag the fast color LUT patch into the patch editor. We're now going to connect the camera texture to the texture field of the fast color LUT, and then the RGBA property of the LUT into the LUT field of the fast color LUT. And then go to the LUT material, click the little yellow arrow by texture, and add that. So you can see nothing happened, and that's because we actually don't have a canvas rectangle for LUTs. So let's do that real quick. We're gonna create a new canvas, name that to dust, name that to filter. And then under this canvas, create a rectangle called LUT. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna fill the width, fill the height, and add the material LUT. And as you can see, the color is different. It's more like, I don't know how to describe it. It's more bohemian. Cool. Yes, cinematic is a good word. Okay, I'm gonna do this real quickly. We have 2 minutes left. I'm just gonna do stuff, and then y'all can watch later. I'm gonna add a texture sampler. Change the UV to be 0.5 and 0.2, and then we're gonna duplicate this 4 more times. Copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. Instead of 0.2, the second one, 0.4, and then 0.6, 0.8, and then 1. And then change, go highlight all materials and add those textures into the patch editor. And then move those to the corresponding texture samplers and then hook those up. Okay, cool. Something went wrong. And that is usually the case. And you just have to troubleshoot. These texture samplers are not. Dust 0.1.05. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. So if you highlight the boxes, just create a new layer and have that layer be over layer 0, and then you'll see the 5 colors. And so that is this filter. And I think that's time. I will stop sharing, I guess. I will also add the file for this filter in the Google Drive as well. Awesome. And if you guys wanted to upload that filter into your own Instagram account, oh, cool. I'm just going to do like one quick thing. Go to Spark AR Hub, which is a dashboard. You can see this in my dashboard. And then go to Publish in Effect. And this is where you upload your file and you add your demo video and your icons and instructions for review. But yeah, and then once published, you can see your insights. So like yesterday, I had 1.3 million views, 1.2 million opens, 614,000 captures, and 42,000 shares on Instagram story. And you can see also like all these stats for all your other filters as well. Cool, awesome. I think that is it. I'm definitely over time, but if you guys want to see some of my filters, I'll put in my @ in the chat. But yeah, thank you.